Good morning, you folks out there in YouTube land. Thrashpondo here, and I'm presenting with you today, I guess what one could call a contractually obligated series of micro reviews for you guys. Yeah, long story short, over my time on doing this, I've committed to doing a few posts for my friends of channels. Anyway, people ask me to do reviews on this matter or that. And I decided to package them all together and put them into one super duper keen post or two. But before I start that, you know what I'm going to ask for. Like, subscribe, share, and hey, guys, I'm this close to 200. Seriously, I'm at 189 as of this morning. So unless I lose a couple out of spite, I could hit 200 with less than a dozen subs. Keep that in mind. But at any rate, without further, I'll do. And I'm going to open with friend of channel Dave Claroni, who asked me many months ago to do Jaws. And I'm going to do just that until I find my glasses. Here they are, yes. I hate wearing these while I'm on camera. I don't like the glare, but I've got to be able to read now, don't I? Anyway, as many of you know, and for those of you who don't, Jaws is actually, well, of course, it's based on the horror novel by late, great writer Peter Benchley, but is actually based on the true story of the 1916 Jersey Shore shark attacks. Now, granted, those have been later attributed to a bull shark, but in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter. But yes, it was this one shark that got into like an inland waterway and actually ended up attacking and killing at least 4, I believe it was more like 6, or maybe a couple survived people. Very sad story. Now, here's the crazy part. Many years ago, well, going on 20, right here on Cape Cod, we had a similar incident in what they call the Finger Lakes. They're more like little tiny inland seas. A great white, a 14-foot female, swam into one of these salt lakes and stayed there for about a week and a half. They think she was either sick or confused or whatever. She did not kill anyone, but it was fascinating having a very large apex predator just sort of swimming around in a place where people actually sometimes take to bathe. I used to swim in something called Bass River, and if I knew sharks would get that far inland, I wouldn't have. But that's another story. Yet, that's the funny thing about Cape Cod. Sharks are actually a sign of a healthy ecosystem, and since the Cape Cod ecosystem has sort of been on the recovery, we got the seals back. Where there are seals, there are sharks. We have to be careful, but it's good to have them back. You know, someday, if you guys ask nicely, I will tell you the story of the Cape Cod shark cult. But that might actually be better for Halloween. But anyway, moving forward, and one last piece of info I gotta share with you folks. One of my favorite movie trivia questions is, supposedly Captain Quint in Jaws was a survivor of what famous U.S. naval disaster? Yes, it was the Indianapolis. And for those of you who don't know, that was the boat which brought the atomic bomb to Tinian Island so that it could end the Second World War. Moving forward, friend of the channel Ken Wilkinson asked me to do a post on the song Girl by Davy Jones. I decided to expand and actually have just a post on Davy Jones. So I'll start with, as you know, Davy Jones was best known as his part of Davy on the Monkees, but he actually got his big break playing the Artful Dodger on the London stage. Trivia tidbit, not a trivia question, I'm going to present it to you. He was actually later replaced by Jack Wilde, as we all know, of H.R. Puffin-Stuff fame. And he, of course, Jack Wilde went on to play the Artful Dodger in the feature film Oliver. Now, the song Girl is actually in both the show The Brady Bunch and the first feature film, and yet at the same time never really made it as a big hit for Mr. Jones. Not entirely sure why. It's a bit sappy, yes, but a lot of his songs were, and they really crawled up the top 40. But in any event, little fun fact, Charles Fox, one of the co-writers, later went on to write the theme song to the TV series The Love Boat. Not to mention one of my favorite old sci-fi epics, Green Slime. Yes, that iconic, top 40 almost theme song, which is actually better than the movie itself. Green Slime. Yes, he wrote that. And a fine job he did. By the way, a couple more things on this song. This is kind of odd. It's right here on YouTube, though, for those who want to check it out. Speaking of the monkeys, there's an episode where it's like a haunted house shtick, and the evildoers inside the house are picking off the monkeys one by one. And there's this very strange scene with Mickey and Mike, where Mickey goes, "First we lost Davy, now we're a trio. Then we lost Peter, and then became a duo. And if I lose you, I'll be a solo. Here I come, walking down the street. I get the funniest." The weird part is, that is the exact order to which we have lost the monkeys. The last surviving member is, in fact, Mickey Dolenz. Crazy. Oh, and one more thing, for those of you who don't know. Iconic singer David Bowie, his actual name is Davy Jones, but changed it to Bowie so he would not be confused with the Monkees icon Davy Jones. He used the name Bowie because I guess that movie about Jim Bowie and his famous Bowie knife was one of his famous as a kid. Moving forward, friend of channel Elias and his new bundle of joy baby Ted asked me some time ago, before Ted was even born, to do a comparison on Shrek I and II. And I came up with a few fun facts, nothing really earth-shaking, but one of the fun things about it is, it of course is based on a picture book for children. And initially it was supposed to be Chris Farley who did the voice of Shrek, but after he recorded all his lines, before they could finish polishing them and whatnot, he passed on, so Mike Myers was brought in to take over on the project, and he is the one who gave Shrek his legendary Scottish accent. That was actually invented by Mike. Now, of course, both of them are based loosely on old fairy tales, but both of them do something which is actually pretty slick. They take a lot of cultural pop references of the time frame and include them into the films for humor purposes. Now, it makes them really, really funny at the time. The only problem is when you try to view them years later, unless you're familiar with those cultural references, the jokes fall flat. I had a very similar problem with the Christy McNichol film, the pirate movie. If you weren't familiar with a lot of things that went on in late 70s, early 80s TV culture, it will make absolutely no sense to you. Of course, that movie didn't make much sense in the first place. But anyway, I think Shrek 1 and 2 have fared a little better, or fairy-tailed a little better, I should say. Oh, one other thing I should mention about Shrek 2, it of course is loosely based on iconic Spencer Tracy film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I'm sure many of you have already seen it, but the connection is there, I promise. I then go on to another request by Ken Wilkinson, who asked me to do Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, there's some really fun stuff about this one. Of course, it's based on the 1992 film, but was inspired by a character in one of my favorite zombie renaissance films, Night of the Comet. Yes, the character of Sam, the sort of hippie zombie warrior, was in fact the inspiration to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, only it's vampires instead of zombies. Ran on WB and later UPN for 6 or 7 seasons, it's a little vague, back in 1997. And is actually a fun show. It's a horror comedy coming of age series, and it's tricky to pull all of those things off. Now, after the show was canceled, it was continued as a comic by Dark Horse Comics, which sadly I don't have any. I kind of had already tuned out of comics by this point, but I always loved Dark Horse. It also inspired the spin off of Angel. And there have been many, many, many proposed reboots of the show since. Who knows, maybe someday. Maybe one where she actually is the mentor. Buffy is the mentor to a new warrior. And I must confess, at one point, I wrote a treatment for a fan fiction based on the TV show. As we were just talking about in my live chat last night, the Rod Serling TV series, The Night Gallery, does a rendition of one of my favorite short stories, The Devil Is Not Mocked. Check it out if you're not familiar with it. My fan fiction was an adaptation of that, only set in present day, and a script for Buffy. I shall elaborate more if any of you folks prove to care. Now, I think that's sufficient for a part 1. I'm going to save the rest for part 2. And yes, John H. and Cindy D., you were in here among other. But I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed and look forward to part 2. Until then, be good, be safe, be careful, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all again very, 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 very soon. Peace.